And when we look at the figures, 9 million soldiers died and 10 million civilians.
The two nuclear bombs which were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were the peak or the pinnacle of the extremity of human cruelty.
Yes.
It should not have ever gone to that extent.
Rasulullah, Rasulullah, Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Ever Merciful. Once again, you are joined live on the Drive Time Show on Monday evening with your host for today, or for this hour. In the next hour, Ataur Rahman. Alongside me, I have my co-host, and it's the first time I'm actually doing a show with him. His name is. He's been on the Drive Time before as well. Musharraf Saab. Welcome, and welcome with me, actually.
Assalamualaikum. Peace be upon you. How are you today?
I'm not too bad. How about yourself? How's your?
It's nice seeing you after a long time.
After a long time, exactly, and then catching up on things. I heard that you were away to Ghana for a.
Yeah, I took a trip to Ghana for a week. To follow the footsteps of our beloved Hazur, the head of the worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Before he was appointed by Allah as the Caliph. He lived there. He spent around 7 to 8 years in Ghana.
So how was this like? Give us maybe just a little bit of a few things that you may have done.
I think what I would say is, we talk about sacrifice, isn't it? We say that our beloved Caliph Hazur, he sacrificed everything and he went there. But unless you actually go there to that country and visit the house where he spent his time, the school, where he used to go and collect the water from the well, all these things, you cannot understand it. You have to see it yourself.
And see it and experience it, and this is something I would love to do myself if the opportunity obviously avails, and anyone who can, they should definitely go and see. What else was like, the city life, and how did you find it?
I think it's not much difference, isn't it? We sit here and talk about Ghana or Africa in general. But you have 4G, 5G over there. You have everything, whatever you need. You have there. It's very advanced. Ghana is one of the most advanced countries in Africa, in the continent of Africa. So everything is there.
And
but especially when you travel to the north, you see the remote villages there, how the people live there, and even now people actually go far away to collect water and bring it to their homes.
So you witnessed the whole, the culture and the way of living, and that must have been like I wouldn't say a moving experience, because that's just life for them.
I think our kids who went with us, traveled with us, they learned a lot.
Okay.
They actually learned a lot, came back, and I think.
And what was the ages of the people you were the children you were supervising?
7 to 15.
Oh, really? The youngest you had children as young as
as young as 5, actually.
Oh, amazing.
So I think that's something which they took back, not to waste electricity, water. When you see that the difficulty the children are going through.
Yes.
And you just come back and you appreciate everything even more.
Now that's this sounds like an excellent and a very successful trip, and I hope that whoever went with you, these memories remain with them for the rest of their lives, and they do become beneficial for them going forward. So
I think just if the listeners, they want to see the highlight videos, they're available on Instagram, on Twitter, on the AMY UK Insta Twitter account, so they can go on there.
Well, I'm going to be the first one to check that out, because it sounds fascinating, and it sounds like something that I would probably want to embark on going on into the future. Yes. So, Musharraf, now let's kickstart the discussion for today, and the first hour of discussion. We have two subjects. In the first hour, we're going to be discussing the Armistice Day.
Yes.
I've had to work hard to actually pronounce this properly, because I was not pronouncing it in the right way. But
I went on Google as well
to make sure that it's pronounced in the right way. So that's going to be our first hour, and Armistice Day was signed in 1980 on November the 11th, 1918. So exactly, you could say about 104 years ago.
Yes.
106 years ago from today.
Yes.
From today, and it's a very, very important day in the history of mankind, because I would say that this was slightly after the time of the promised Messiah, Islam, where he had already made a prophecy about wars that are, going to absolutely change the landscape of what it means, of what a war is. These are going to be wars of a horrific nature, and this happened 10 years after his demise. Right?
Yes.
So this hour is going to be very much, discussing the importance of that day, and and how life has maybe transpired and how life has changed with the passage of time. Has it been beneficial, or have people learned anything from the past?
Yes.
So, as we reflect on Armistice Day and its relevance in today's world, we are left with challenging questions. Have we truly learned from the devastation of the past wars, or are we caught in a cycle where interests of the powerful continue to overshadow the suffering of the innocent? So, to stay with us as we reflect on history and look at the world today. So, Musharraf, can you give us a bit of a historical background of, although we've tried to maybe give a general background, but maybe more of a precise historical background of this.
Yeah, I think when we look back in 1918, on the 11th of November, there was a treaty signed on that day in France, which was signed between Germany and other countries, that this should never happen again.
Yes.
And the reason was because in the First World War, when we look at the figures, 9 million soldiers died and 10 million civilians. So that's when the people came together and said, we don't want this to happen again in the future.
It is like a massive wipeout of humanity. Right?
Exactly.
It's a sudden, massive wipeout. You hear about stats and figures in historical records of wars and conflicts, devastations.
Because this is something which the world never saw before.
Yeah.
It's the first time something like this happened on a very big scale,
Very large scale,
where you actually it's a World War One.
Yes.
The First World War happened. So at that time they said, we will never do this again.
Yeah.
And there was actually the slogan, never again.
Never again.
Which they call today as well.
Yeah.
Never again. Now the question is that this treaty was signed in 1918 and 106 years have passed. The question will be that the people who did the sacrifice, did we learn anything from that sacrifice, or are we continuing with everything? And I think this is something which we will discuss today in this podcast.
You make a very important point in the sense that, did we learn anything from the sacrifice of people who lived over 100 years ago?
Yes.
And I would like to maybe answer it in the sense that if we don't learn, maybe we would end up becoming an example. I wouldn't say us, because we're not in, well, maybe even us.
We never know. It can happen in our lifetime.
It can happen in our lifetime. Yeah. We might have to end up having to follow the orders of whoever is in charge. And, do we want to become the example of people speaking about us in 100 years? And is there going to be anyone left to even speak about us in 100 years if there is a war that breaks out of this magnitude that it did 100 years ago in today's world? And with the advancement of modern warfare and technological advancement in weaponry, right?
Yes.
You think that, look, if we are not learning from the past, is our present actually going to be an example going forward? Will there be anything left?
Even yesterday, for example, I was driving and I saw all these people who were standing outside, and praying. But the question is remembering enough? They died 106 years ago, even in the Second World War. So many people, they sacrificed themselves for the country. And the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, he said, Hubbul watni min al-iman. That to love your country is part of your faith.
Yes.
You need to love. And we need to remember, just another point which I would like to mention is that, yes, for example, in Britain, many British, there were many British soldiers. but there were also a lot of Muslim soldiers.
Yes.
And this is why I mentioned Hubbul Watni min al-Iman, that for every Muslim, it's important to follow the law of the country. But that's another topic.
Exactly.
We can touch
And I
this
know
topic
it's a very important point that you raised, and that's exactly what I was also alluding to. That look, when I was saying that even we could be, we might have to experience this ourselves. That's exactly what I was alluding to. That if we are told that we have to go and defend our country, then there's no other question, because that's that is part of our faith, right?
Yes.
Hubbul watni min al-Iman.
Yes.
But look, we're digressing a lot in terms of what could happen, what could not happen.
Yes.
That's just like far away. But the hope was that this would be a war. This is in reference to World War One. That this would be a war to end all wars. A phrase that now seems to be tragically optimistic and rather failed, right? And Armistice Day, later known as Remembrance Day in many Commonwealth countries and Veterans Day in the United States, was established to honour the fallen and to serve as a stark reminder of the horrors of war. Now, this is, for me, a bit, I don't know, ironic, I could say, right? That, there is a specific mention in regards to like the United Kingdom and the United States being the two promoters of trying to push this idea of remembering horrors of the past and not having to relive them. But it seems like these two nations, I mean, we're not here to promote hatred against anyone, or but there is this you can always question politically and historically, but it seems as if these two nations seem to be at the forefront of a lot of issues that are not resolving. Okay. Something which I could obviously think of, and maybe it will be discussed as we go through in the program or in the show, is the current Palestine issue. What has been the input of the British government?
I mean, current issues, but also if you go to the past, you speak about colonialism.
Yes.
The British Empire. It's the French Empire. We see how they colonized countries, isn't it?
Colonized country through how? Through the force. A forced colonization, which also has there are blood on the there is blood on the hands as well, right?
Yes.
So this is the thing, right? So it seems as if there's like, okay, well, let's not remember the mistakes that we made, although we continue to make them. We continue to make horrors for others. This comes back to your point in regards to is it enough to remember?
Yes.
What are we doing? How are we self-reflecting? Is it remembrance, or is it self-reflection, or is there a means to think that, look, how is all of this going to stop, right?
Yes.
So this is something which really fascinates me, especially now that it's occurred. So the red poppy became a symbol of remembrance. Right? We see it all the time.
Yeah, we see it. Everyone is selling it nowadays on the streets.
It looks really good, and it looks really. It is a very nice gesture, I would say, in the sense that you remember
those soldiers.
Yeah, those soldiers
sacrificed their lives.
Yeah, and I think it's also. What does that symbol represent to you? For instance, let's talk of it from a South Asian migrant perspective. Like, we are children of South Asian migrants, but me and you.
I mean, whenever I see that symbol, of course, I acknowledge that day.
Yes.
That this happened. We should remember those soldiers. But again, coming back to the first point which I mentioned, is remembering really enough?
Yeah. Is remembering really enough?
I think just remembering is not enough.
Yeah.
We should learn from that lesson and say we really don't want this to happen. And this is why the slogan is never again.
Never again.
So,
but it's not. It doesn't seem to be.
It keeps happening. It's a cycle.
I guess. Look, some slogans are raised there and then. Okay, when you're fresh from the trauma, and when you forget the trauma. I wouldn't say forget the trauma, but when you with the passage of time. There seems to be a forgetting of the trauma, not by the people who experienced it, but the next few generations, right? They haven't experienced that trauma. So the children of those who have suffered or who have fought in world wars, their grandchildren, with their passage of time, their children, they don't know the horrors of the war that their grandparents have had to suffer.
Yes.
So it just seems like then it seems that these slogans, which were apparent at the time, which were very important at the time, become mere hollow words. But the point I was trying to...
I think just alluding to this point, when you, for example, go to Japan, you know, you see Japan is a country, they experienced World War One and Two, and especially the atomic bombs which they fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they are totally against any kind of war.
No.
They're very peaceful. Even when you go to Japan, they're very peaceful people, and they're against wars, and because they've experienced it.
Yeah.
But
they've experienced the consequences of
for
war.
Years. For years.
I think, you know, if you... There's different ways of reading history, okay? I think the two nuclear bombs which were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you know, they were the peak or the pinnacle of the extremity of human cruelty.
Yes.
You know, it should not have ever gone to that extent. And they witnessed it. They've seen it firsthand, the devastations that can be caused if things get completely out of hand, right? And I think that was this point that you raised. Look, you know, that devastation can completely change people. I don't know what they were like, what their mood was during the war.
Yeah.
And I don't speak for all the people who had experienced that war.
Yeah.
But that kind of, you're absolutely right that things like this, you know, they just absolutely change the mindset.
Especially when they saw the children which are born disabled and, you know, without ears, legs, and
the consequent after effects of a nuclear war, of a specific nuclear bomb that is detonated on a city. A spread in democracy, that seems to be the way to appease everyone.
Yes.
Whereas, you know, it's not necessarily, as you've just mentioned, it's actually maybe just a continuing of the you know, the stronghold of imperialism.
Yes.
And how has the imperialism been? Is this in maybe another century or so?
They talk about democracy, but do you really see it? That's the question. People are on the street saying stop war, but I just see imperialism in there, that there's one leader and he wants to do it the way he wants to do it, and rather than listening to the people who are literally on the streets saying that stop the war, stop everything that's happening in Gaza.
Musharraf, I would like to think of it in the sense that governments are not really run on populism and popular choices, right? Of course, not necessarily popular choices are wrong in most cases, because I believe people generally are good from inside, and this slogan of "Stop War" is because of that good that's within a person, within the human beings generally. So they should take into account what is right, not what's popular. Okay. And I guess, look, these slogans of stop war and especially stop genocide, you know, that's absolutely right. Stop it. And they should take it in account. And if they're not, well, they have serious questions to answer from within. What is the reason that you're not, you know, if you claim to be the front runners or the flag bearers of democracy and security and humanity, you know, why is it okay for babies to be dying around the world? It just doesn't add up.
Exactly.
So and you know, as you mentioned, like from the Iraq War to interventions in Libya and Syria, you know, these actions raise a very serious question, and we like to think that, you know, what about Palestine, a settler colonial project that is inflicting unimaginable pain and suffering on Palestinians at the moment through genocide and ethnic cleansing, which some may argue was inevitable which was the inevitable outcome for years.
And then we said there shouldn't be any colonialism, and you know, this is what it is, isn't it?
It is literally that.
Still there.
It is literally that, but not as like, oh well, this is part of the empire. You know, it's not. It's not direct admission.
I think it is, isn't it? Israel is saying we want to take over Palestine.
They want to do
it should become Israel.
They don't. The way they want it is, I think they just want to erase whatever they think is that part of the world, of that neighbor, or that part within their grasp, and think none of it and just settle it down as the extended version of whatever they already have. So it's become quite insane, the way that they want to just completely disregard the creation of God Almighty. God is the one who is responsible for the life that He has bestowed on this earth, and it seems like as if some people think that it's they have no regard for it.
Yes.
And that's what's really the issue here. So we are also seeing, history being exploited. For over years, we have been hearing people saying "never again," and which some of us actually still take seriously. I don't know. People want to take this seriously. They really do. They don't want to give up, and they don't want to let history repeat itself. But then again, it just keeps happening again.
Yeah. And the Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, he has spoken about this for many, many years now. He has visited different parliaments and countries, and he has delivered addresses there.
Yeah.
And he has mentioned that if there is no justice in the world, and I think this is the key, justice, then there won't be any peace.
Yeah.
And if this continues, a third world war will happen. And that's how people will learn at the end of the day. Otherwise, if...
sorry, Michelle, I'll cut you off there. You're making a brilliant point. But maybe we are already in Third World War. We just... It hasn't just been given the title of the Third World War. It's not like it's being acknowledged or accepted. They are not like broadcasting it in that way. But the constant conflict of people being stuck, like you could say the British are stuck, or the Americans are stuck. Who do they support when it comes to Palestine and Israel? Who do they support when it comes to the Ukraine and the Russia issue? Who do they support when it comes to maybe issues in the subcontinent or in Africa, as you also mentioned? It is a global tangle. But we have our next guest. We have Jeff Tubbs, who is he is the Remembrance Project Manager for Peace Pledge Union. His work focuses on building a peaceful and inclusive culture of remembrance alongside working for the PPU. Jeff is a painter and a magician. So welcome to the Drive Time Show, Jeff.
Hi there, nice to be on the show.
Most welcome, and it's lovely to have you. So can you tell us a bit about your organisation, the Peace Pledge Union?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Peace Pledge Union is one of the UK's oldest pacifist organisations. It goes back to 1934. So that's 90 years this year, working for a world without war, for peace and peace education. Our work is basically divided between promoting peace and non-violence, opposing militarism and the causes of war today, and perhaps the thing that's known for, which is white poppies. So in the run-up to Remembrance Day, we promote white poppies as an alternative symbol of remembrance.
Okay. Brilliant. And what is your concern with how Armistice Day is commemorated, and what do you mean by decolonizing remembrance?
Well, just to take the first bit of your question first, because that's the broader issue in a way. So Remembrance Day has always been connected to the British Armed Forces.
Yes.
If you look at the official organisation, the Royal British Legion, that promotes the red poppy, it's very explicit that the red poppy is there to commemorate British and Allied military victims of war. And we feel at the Peace Pledge Union that you can't really recognise the full human cost of war if you only recognise British military victims of war.
Yes.
The majority of people who die in conflict are civilians, and of all nationalities as well, all around the world, both in the past and today. So that's the aim of the White Poppy, to remember all victims of war and to stand up actively for peace against the normalisation of war and the celebration of the armed forces that you often see on Remembrance Day. The second bit of your question about decolonising remembrance, this is a bit more specific. This was a new initiative we've just launched literally yesterday this year, on Remembrance Sunday this year. And it's a specific attempt to look at one aspect of remembrance that is often overlooked, which is the victims of colonial wars. Because obviously, if you want to remember all victims of war, if you want to remember the human cost of conflicts that the UK has been involved in over the last 100 years, you're going to have to look at the victims of colonial wars because of the British Empire. And so we think that a reckoning with that history is long overdue, and that really the Remembrance Day should encourage people to look critically at the past and to remember the victims of colonial wars.
Yeah, and I think it's in the sense that it's also not just remembering the past, but it might require a rewriting of historical narratives, and not a revisit and a relook into things in that sense as well.
Absolutely, because you can only really recognise the human cost of colonial wars if you challenge those who are still prone to glorify empire. Only the other day, Robert Denrick, the Conservative politician, was saying that the former colonies should be grateful for the British Empire. So there are still people who want to whitewash the history of that of colonization. Still people who want to actively celebrate it. So we have to actively resist that if we want to look at the darkest chapters of British history with open eyes.
100%.
I mean, we speak about peace, isn't it? That there should be peace in the world, but we should remember that peace is not just the absence of war, but it's actually spreading love and harmony as well, giving charity, helping the poor as well, fulfilling the right of God's creation. That's true peace, isn't it?
Michelle, you bring up a fascinating point here, because I think I was going through today. I was going through a like an old verse of, or a Quran class, you could say, of the fourth caliph of the Jamaat Ahmadiyya. And there was this hadith which was brought up, this narration of the Prophet which was brought up, in which the Prophet says that, should I tell you what is more greater than doing three great acts such as praying, fasting, and giving charity, right? And the fourth caliph, first he said, look, there is nothing more greater than praying. Praying is the greatest thing, the greatest act of righteousness. And then he explains, when the second part of the narration comes in, that when you stop a quarrel between two people, that is very important. That is a great thing. So then he explains in the sense that, look, this is the first step. It's not that it's better than praying or giving charity or giving or fasting. To get to that stage where you can do these things properly, such as praying, fasting, and giving charity, three of the greatest acts which the believers can do, you have to have that state of mind which is peaceful. And that's not possible if in your surrounding there is conflict, there is disagreement. You have, you might have family issues. You touched upon something which is, bringing peace doesn't just necessarily mean there's no wars going on. If you're not, if you've got like tensions within your own surrounding, within your own settings. That's also a form of, like, I wouldn't say war, but it's not, because it's not resulting in bloodshed. Hopefully, it doesn't ever result in that. But it is like, it's not this kind of state you want to be in. There has to be that state of peace for spirituality to then thrive. If you're this is like you can say it's a very key teaching from an Islamic point of view. And
I think this is what Islam teaches as well. I would like to quote a reference from the Holy Quran, chapter 5, verse 9, where God Almighty states, "And let not a people's enmity incite you to act otherwise than with justice. Be always just, that is nearer to righteousness."
Indeed.
So the Holy Quran on many occasions speaks about being just, and I think that's something which is missing nowadays.
Yeah, and you highlighted it in the beginning, in some part during the discussion. The fifth caliph, he constantly reminds people that as long as you remain acted on justice, you can't go wrong. If as long, and you brought it up as well, that justice is the key essence.
Yes.
And that seems to be the one that seems to be missing. But then, look, there is this question of what is justice from everyone's point of view, right?
Yeah.
If there's two people conflicting, there's going to be two versions of what they think is justice, and then it means that the middle, the intercessor, the person in the middle who has to make the
third person,
the intermediate has to be. That's where he has to determine where justice is. But then, of course, if he decides in one's favor, the other might not consider it to be. Yeah, they might not consider it to be justice.
محسنا ظهر العطايا والجدى